All right, so get ready, everyone, because today we are diving headfirst into one of the most fascinating and compelling UFO cases in history. It's the Trans-en-Provence incident. We're talking about rural France back in 1981. A farmer named Renato Nicolai. And an encounter that has puzzled researchers for decades.
And you know what really sets this case apart, and what makes it so captivating for us to really dig into today, is the incredible amount of evidence we have available. This isn't just another case of someone saying they saw strange lights up in the sky. We're talking about physical traces, traces that were analyzed by GAIPAN, the official French organization entirely devoted to investigating UFO activity.
Okay, so let's try to paint a picture here. It's a bright January day. Nicolai is working on his property. And then he sees something totally out of the ordinary. What exactly did he see?
Well, Nicolai described seeing a disc-shaped object. It was descending slowly, and it landed a short distance away from him. He even said that he heard a faint whistling sound as it touched down. Now, the interesting thing is that this wasn't a long encounter at all. The object just stayed there for a very brief time. It was only a matter of seconds, really. And then it just took off again, and it was moving incredibly fast.
And the fact that Nicolai, reported this so quickly, almost immediately to the authorities, that really adds to the whole mystery, right? It makes it seem less likely that he was trying to just get attention or that he was making up the story.
Oh, absolutely. I think his immediate action is a big reason why GAIPAN took the case as seriously as they did. They went to the location and they began documenting everything. And what they discovered, well, that's where things start to get really interesting. There were these very clear circular marks on the ground, right where Nikolai had said the object had landed.
So it's more than just someone saying they saw something. We're talking about actual physical marks. So did the investigators just take pictures and leave? What did they do with all this evidence?
Oh, no, they didn't just take pictures. They went all in. They collected soil samples from inside and around those circular marks, and they also took plant samples from the surrounding area, and then all of that was taken to a lab for analysis.
All right, now I'm really hooked. Let's get to the results. What did those analyses show?
Well, this is where the mystery just gets deeper. The soil analysis showed that the soil had been exposed to some serious pressure and heat. It was far beyond what you would expect from normal weather conditions. It's like something incredibly heavy and extremely hot had been pressing down on that spot.
So we have a mysterious object, a witness who reports it right away, physical marks on the ground, and now soil analysis that tells us something strange was happening. So what about the plant samples? Did they show anything unusual?
This is where things get even more intriguing. Remember, this wasn't just a quick look at some plants. They did an in-depth biochemical analysis. And what they found were changes in the composition of the plants, changes that suggested they had been exposed to some type of radiation.
Hold on. Radiation. Now that really changes things. What kind of radiation are we talking about? And did the soil analysis support this?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. The analysis didn't specify the type of radiation, but when you consider the intense heat and pressure, combined with these really strange changes in the plants, well, it takes this case from just curious to incredibly perplexing.
So we have a mystery with a bunch of intriguing pieces. A strange object, physical marks, and the possibility of radiation. This is already a lot to process, and we've only just started. Before we get into all the different theories about what might have happened, let's hear what some of the experts who've studied Trans-en-Provence have to say.
Right, so one of the most fascinating statements comes from Jean-Pierre Petit. He's a renowned physicist who examined the evidence, and his conclusion was that the changes they found in the soil and plants just couldn't be explained by any conventional means.
Wow, that's a bold statement coming from a physicist. It sounds like we're dealing with something truly unusual here. Were there any other experts who weighed in on this case?
Yes, absolutely. Jacques Vallée, he's a leading figure in UFO research. He's on record saying that Trans-en-Provence is one of the best documented UFO cases we have. The thorough investigation, the physical evidence, all of it. It gives the case a level of credibility that you rarely see in this field.
Okay, so we've laid out all this incredible evidence. A strange object, a reliable witness, physical traces on the ground, and those lab results that suggest there was some intense heat and pressure, and maybe even radiation exposure. It's starting to sound less and less like just a simple misidentification, and more like something truly extraordinary.
Yeah, exactly. What's so fascinating about the Trans-en-Provence case is that it pushes us to the very limits of what we can explain. Using conventional science, I mean. It forces us to think about possibilities that might seem, well, a bit far out there.
Right, so let's talk about those possibilities. I know the idea that jumps to mind, especially when we're talking about a disc-shaped object, is aliens, the extraterrestrial hypothesis. Is there anything about this case specifically that makes that theory stand out as particularly compelling?
Well, it's not just the shape of the object, though. I mean, that certainly feeds into the popular imagination. It's more the combination of everything. The fact that the object was hovering silently, the incredibly fast descent that Nikolai described, and of course those physical effects on the environment that we can't really explain. All of that points to something that's beyond our current understanding of technology.
I can see why that theory would be tempting, but let's be real. The ET hypothesis usually comes with a lot of skepticism. Are there any other explanations, maybe something within the realm of known science, that could possibly account for what happened in Trans-en-Provence?
Yeah, some researchers have suggested that maybe what Nikolai saw could have been some super advanced secret aircraft, like maybe a prototype that some government agency was testing, something so advanced that its capabilities were far beyond anything the public knew about at the time.
Okay, so like a top-secret stealth plane, or maybe even an experimental drone. I guess that would explain why there aren't any official records that match up with the event. But wouldn't a craft that advanced, especially one that could generate that kind of heat and pressure, wouldn't it have left behind more obvious signs? I mean, wouldn't we expect to find some leftover radiation or something that clearly shows how it was powered?
That's a good point. And it is one of the big challenges for the advanced aircraft theory. People who support this idea argue that a really sophisticated aircraft might be able to hide its signature or use technology that doesn't leave much of a trace. But the fact that we don't have more conclusive evidence is still a big problem for this explanation.
So it seems like we're stuck in this loop, where the evidence is strong enough to suggest that something really extraordinary happened, but it's not quite enough to tell us exactly what that something was.
Yeah, and that's why the Trans-en-Provence case is so intriguing. It sits right on that blurry line between what we know and what we don't know, between scientific inquiry and the limits of our understanding. And when we don't have clear answers, it often leads to another discussion about the need for more transparency from governments and official organizations, when it comes to UFOs, that is.
You're right. Earlier we mentioned Francois Louange, the French politician, and how he's been advocating for more openness about UFO sightings. What exactly is he calling for?
Well, Louange has been pretty vocal about the need for governments to declassify files that are related to UFOs. He argues that the public has a right to know the truth, whatever that truth may be. And he says that keeping this information secret just creates distrust and feeds conspiracy theories.
I think a lot of people would agree with him. It's one thing to acknowledge that there might be things we don't understand, but it's another thing entirely to say that information is being kept from the public on purpose.
Right. That kind of approach just leads to more questions and uncertainty.
And this is where cases like Trans-en-Provence become so important to this conversation. They challenge us to look at the limits of what we know, to question what we think is true, and to demand more transparency from those who are in power.
Exactly. It's a powerful reminder that the search for knowledge should never be held back by secrecy or by people trying to hide things.
Couldn't agree more.
Whether we're talking about UFOs or classified technologies or anything else that's important to the public, open access to information is crucial.
So here we are, we've examined the evidence, we've considered the theories, but we're still missing that definitive answer, that final piece of the puzzle. What do we make of that?
Well, maybe the fact that we don't have a clear resolution is part of what makes the Trans-en-Provence incident so compelling. It reminds us that there are mysteries out there, mysteries that didn't have easy answers, mysteries that challenge our assumptions, and force us to broaden our understanding of what's possible.
It's a humbling thought, this idea that we, with our limited knowledge and technology, may just be scratching the surface of what's really out there.
Yeah, the universe is vast and incredibly complex, and Trans-en-Provence is a really strong reminder that we're still a long way from understanding everything.
We've spent all this time really digging into the Trans-en-Provence case, from that first encounter to all that scientific analysis, and even exploring some of those theories that, well, that really make you think. But what's really striking me is how this case, even after so many years, still has such a hold on us. It really captures the imagination.
It's true, Trans-en-Provence isn't just another UFO sighting that people have forgotten about. People are still debating it, and it inspires new research even today, and I think there's some very specific reasons for that.
So let's talk about those reasons. What makes this particular case stand out from so many others?
Well, for one thing, the physical evidence gives it a level of credibility that you often don't find in UFO reports. We're not just relying on people saying they saw something. We have actual data, those marks on the ground, the soil analysis, the strange things they found in the plants. All of that needs an explanation.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to dismiss that kind of data, to say it's all just imagination or made up, especially when you have serious scientists backing it up.
Exactly. And then there's the fact that Gaipan was involved, a well-respected scientific organization. That adds another layer of seriousness to the whole thing. It tells us that they didn't just ignore this as some kind of hoax or a mistake.
Right. Having a government agency take it seriously, doing all those investigations, that definitely raises the stakes.
And of course, the fact that it's still a mystery plays a huge part. Even with all the evidence and analysis, we don't have a definitive answer. And it's that unanswered question that keeps drawing people back to Trans-en-Provence, trying to find clues, trying to put the pieces together.
It's like an invitation to explore, to push the boundaries of what we understand. It makes you think, though, what kind of lasting impact has this case had on UFO research in general?
Well, I think one of the most important things it's done is to raise the standard for evidence in UFO research. It showed us that for a case to be considered credible, you need more than just eyewitness accounts. You need tangible data, scientific analysis, a thorough investigation. All of that is crucial to making these events believable.
So it's pushed the field in a more scientific direction. Less speculation, more reliance on actual data.
Exactly. Trans-en-Provence has become the gold standard. Other UFO sightings are often compared to it.
And it seems like it's also fueled that call for more transparency from governments about UFOs. I mean, we've seen this whole movement growing, people advocating for the release of classified information about UFO sightings. And it feels like Trans-en-Provence played a part in that.
I think that's a direct result of cases like this. We have such strong evidence, but we're still missing those clear answers. And then you add in the possibility that some information is being kept secret. It just makes the mystery even deeper. And it fuels all those conspiracy theories.
It makes perfect sense. Transparency is so important, especially when you're dealing with something that could change our whole understanding of things, like UFOs. It's about building trust and being open and honest about exploring the unknown.
Exactly. That spirit of inquiry, that willingness to embrace what we don't know and to challenge what we think we know. That's what drives us forward in our search for knowledge and understanding.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Trans-en-Provence UFO incident, I think we're left with this feeling of wonder, a bit of mystery, of course, and a deep respect for the power of the unexplained. It's been quite a journey.
It really shows us that the universe is full of surprises and that we're far from done exploring. Who knows what else is out there waiting to be discovered?
That's what makes it so exciting, right? The unknown is always calling to us, inviting us to explore, to ask questions, to push the limits of what we believe is possible. And with that, we'll bring this episode of The Deep Dive to a close. Thanks for joining us on this exploration of one of the most fascinating UFO cases ever recorded.
Until next time, keep exploring the world around you. Keep asking questions and never lose that sense of wonder.
Could this be evidence of, extraterrestrial contact, or is there something else going on, something more down to earth?
The age-old question, and the Pescara case is a particularly intriguing one. What makes it stand out from other sightings?
Well, for one thing, it wasn't just some quick, blurry light in the sky.
Yeah, those are always tough to work with. Too much room for interpretation.
Exactly. But in Pescara, we have collaboration from military radar. Like they actually picked something up.
Oh, wow, that definitely changes things. Military radar adds a level of credibility you don't often see in these cases.
Right. And get this, a lot of the witnesses, even an Italian Air Force pilot, they described the object's movements as, like, totally alien.
Alien as in unlike anything they'd ever seen, or alien as in...
Haha, well, both, maybe. But seriously, they said it was unlike any known technology. So imagine this.
Okay, I'm picturing it. Lay it on me.
It's October 27th, 1954. Pescara, Italy. It's getting dark, the sun's setting.
Okay, beautiful Italian evening. Got it.
And suddenly, people start seeing this bright, metallic, disc-shaped object just hovering in the sky.
Classic disc shape. A real flying saucer.
That's what they're saying. But it wasn't just hovering there like a balloon or something. It was moving all over the place, flashing blue and red lights.
Sounds like it was putting on a show.
Seriously. And that's where the radar data comes in, because it wasn't just a visual thing. Multiple radar operators at a military base nearby, they picked this thing up on their screens.
Okay, so we've got visual confirmation from multiple witnesses and radar data. That's pretty solid evidence that something unusual was happening.
Totally. I mean, it's one thing to have people saying they saw something strange, but when you add the military radar, it kind of kicks it up a notch.
Absolutely. It takes it from, hey, did you see that, to, okay, we need to figure out what that was.
Right. And here's where it gets even weirder. This UFO, it didn't just hover and then vanish. It actually landed.
Landed? Wow, this just keeps getting more interesting. Where did it land?
In a wooded area outside the city. And that's when things take a really interesting turn. We start getting reports of humanoids.
Humanoids, as in beings?
Yeah, like creatures. A local farmer named Marco Bellini, he claimed to see figures coming out of the landed object. Can you imagine?
I mean, talk about a close encounter. That's incredible. What did these humanoids look like?
Bellini described them as super tall, like 2 meters tall, and they were wearing these silver suits.
2 meters, that's over 6 feet tall. And silver suits, huh? Sounds like something straight out of a science fiction movie.
Right, so we got this crazy event, multiple eyewitnesses, a UFO doing things our technology can't explain, military radar, and humanoid figures. It's wild.
You've definitely got my attention now. What did the expert make of all this?
Well, some big names in the UFO world, like Roberto Pinati and Paula Harris, they thought the Pescara case was super credible.
Panatti and Harris, those are some heavy hitters in the field. What was it about this case that convinced them?
Well, Pinati said it was the consistency of all the witness statements. Like all these people, different backgrounds, different perspectives, but they all saw basically the same thing.
Yeah, that's tough to explain away as just coincidence.
Exactly. And the case even went beyond UFO circles and got into politics.
Politics? How did that happen?
This Italian deputy, Giuseppe Vittino, he started demanding that the government declassify their UFO files. He was specifically talking about the Pescara incident. He's all about transparency, wants to know what really went down.
So it's not just UFO enthusiasts who are interested in this? A government official is calling for answers? That's pretty significant.
Right. It makes you wonder, what did they be hiding?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? What secrets might those files hold? It really is intriguing. What else can you tell me about these humanoids? Like, were there any more details about their appearance?
Oh, yeah, there's more. Bellini, the farmer who saw them, he said they were wearing these, like, silver suits, right? But he couldn't make out any facial features.
No facial features. That's strange. What, like no eyes, no mouth?
Yeah, that's what he said. And it's not like it was super dark. It was twilight, so there was still some light.
That's really interesting. So we're not talking about, little green men with big eyes. These were beings that looked, well, distinctly not human.
Exactly. And Bellini also said they were communicating with each other, but not with any kind of language he recognized. He said it was more like gestures.
Gestures, like a silent language.
Yeah, kind of. He described it as a series of movements, almost like they were, I don't know, like dancing. No, not really dancing.
Okay, that's pretty wild. Communicating without speaking, that's definitely something you see a lot in science fiction.
It is like maybe they communicate telepathically or something.
Who knows? It's definitely a possibility. After all, we're already considering the idea that they might be extraterrestrial, so why not consider that they might communicate in ways we don't even understand?
Right. It's hard to wrap your head around, but I know some people are going to hear all this and say, come on, this is just a story. It's too crazy to be true.
Of course, there will always be skeptics, and that's fine. Healthy skepticism is important. But here's the thing about the Pescara case. It wasn't just one person seeing things. We have multiple witnesses, all describing essentially the same event, and they're all from different backgrounds. You have a pilot, a farmer, military personnel.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine they all just like made up the same story.
Exactly. And then you add in the radar data, which is, objective scientific evidence. So we have the human element and the technological confirmation.
Right, so it's not just people saying they saw something strange. The radar shows there was definitely an unidentified object in the airspace.
Precisely. The radar backs up the witness testimonies. And yet, even with all that, we still don't have that one piece of, definitive, irrefutable proof. It's frustrating, It's like we're looking at a puzzle, but some of the pieces are missing.
It's funny you say that because it does feel like a puzzle. And every time you think you're getting close to solving it, another piece pops up that makes you question everything. It's like, with all the technology we have now, why haven't we gotten any clear, undeniable evidence of UFOs? You'd think with our fancy cameras and super advanced radar, we'd be able to get some solid proof.
You would think, wouldn't you? But the thing about UFO sightings is that they're often so fleeting, so random. They appear, they disappear, and they rarely stick around long enough for us to get a really good look, let alone get a clear picture or a detailed radar reading.
It's like they don't want to be caught on camera. But okay, have there been any similar incidents, in Italy or anywhere else, other cases where people saw humanoids? Because if there are, maybe we can find some kind of pattern or connection.
That's a good point. Looking for patterns is a key part of UFO research. And yes, there have been other cases with similar elements. For example, there's the Rendlesham Forest incident in England. That was back in 1980.
Rendlesham Forest, what happened there?
Military personnel stationed there reported seeing a strange craft land in the woods, very similar to what happened in Pescara. And there have been other reports of humanoids or beings associated with UFO sightings around the world.
So it's not just this one isolated incident. It seems like there's something bigger going on.
That's what some researchers believe. They think these recurring patterns, especially the descriptions of the objects and the beings, suggest a global phenomenon.
That's pretty mind-blowing. But I still keep coming back to this question of evidence. Why, with all the smartphones and security cameras everywhere, haven't we caught a UFO on film, like clearly and undeniably?
Right. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? We have so much technology at our disposal, but so far, most of the photos and videos claiming to show UFOs are either blurry, out of focus, or easily explained as something else.
So even with all our high-tech gadgets, we're still no closer to getting that definitive proof.
It seems that way. It's possible our technology, as advanced as it is, still isn't quite up to the task. Or maybe we just haven't been lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time with the right equipment.
It's frustrating, but it's also kind of exciting, right? The fact that there's still so much we don't know, so much that's unexplained.
Exactly. And it's that sense of wonder, that curiosity about the unknown that keeps us searching, keeps us asking questions.
I know what you mean. It's like, even though we don't have all the answers, it's still pretty amazing to think about all the possibilities. But okay, let's say we never figure out for sure what happened in Pescara. What do we learn from a case like this? What are the, like, big takeaways?
Well, I think one of the most important things we can learn from Pescara is that we shouldn't be so quick to dismiss eyewitness accounts. For a long time, anyone who said they saw a UFO was kind of seen as, well, unreliable. But Pescara shows us that we need to take those accounts seriously, especially when you have multiple people, like we do here, from different backgrounds, all saying basically the same thing, and especially when you have radar data to back it up.
So it's a good reminder to, like, not just assume people are making stuff up, right? Especially when their stories match up.
Exactly, and it means we need to be more open-minded when we investigate these things. I think another big takeaway from Pescara is the need for more transparency, from the government when it comes to UFOs. The fact that an Italian politician actually called for them to declassify their UFO files, it makes you wonder, what are they hiding?
Right. It's like, what if they have all this information about UFOs that they're not sharing?
It's definitely possible. And if they do, that information could completely change how we understand, well, everything. The universe, our place in it, the whole deal.
It's a pretty crazy thought. But okay, even if it wasn't aliens, even if we never know for sure what happened, the Pescara case still shows us that there's so much out there that we just don't understand.
Absolutely. It reminds us that there are still mysteries in the world, things that we can't easily explain, things that challenge everything we thought we knew.
It makes you feel kind of small, doesn't it? Knowing that there's so much we don't know.
It does, but it's also exciting, I think. It's that sense of wonder, that curiosity about the unknown that makes life interesting, right?
Totally. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the Pescara UFO incident. It's been a wild ride.
My pleasure. It's always fun to explore these mysteries.
And to everyone listening, keep digging into this case if you're interested. Do your own research, draw your own conclusions. The truth is out there somewhere.
And on that note, I'll leave you with one last thought. If it wasn't aliens in Pescara, what was it? What could explain all those sightings, the radar data, the whole thing? It's a question worth thinking about.
Good one. All right, everyone, until next time, keep looking up and keep those minds open. Welcome back, listeners. Ready for another deep dive? Today we're heading into a real head-scratcher, a place where the lines between reality and the unexplained get kind of blurry, the Rendlesham Forest incident.
Ooh, this is a good one.
Picture it, England, late December 1980, deep in the winter. And there's Rendlesham Forest right by the Woodbridge Royal Air Force Base in Suffolk.
Setting the scene, I like it.
Right, so you've got these strange lights appearing over the forest. Not just your average lights, mind you. They were moving in, well, ways that no one could really explain.
Definitely sounds like the start of something interesting.
It definitely is. What started as just a weird sighting turned into a whole series of events that still have researchers scratching their heads. And those who love a good mystery, well, they're eating this up.
And why not? Who doesn't love a good mystery, especially when we have so much to dig into? We've got firsthand accounts from the military personnel at the base, the folks who are supposed to be keeping us safe from threats, both the ones we know about and the ones we don't.
Right, we'll be looking at those accounts, plus official reports, the documents that are, well, supposed to clear things up but often don't.
And of course, we can't forget the theories, right? The ones that have been swirling around this incident for years.
It's like we're putting together a puzzle, but someone lost a few of the pieces and threw a fog machine in for good measure.
Sounds about right, but that's where we come in, right?
Exactly. We'll guide you through the most compelling evidence, and you can be the detective.
Love it.
So back to December 26, 1980, early morning, shadows are long, secrets are whispering. Security personnel at RAF Woodbridge report seeing those unusual lights in Rendlesham Forest.
Okay, so things are kicking off.
They are. A security patrol led by Sergeant Jim Peniston gets sent in to investigate.
Can you imagine being in his shoes, heading into the forest with just a flashlight, and that feeling like something's just not right?
I get chills just thinking about it. So Peniston goes into those woods, and what he finds becomes, well, the foundation of the whole Rendlesham Forest incident.
The plot thickens.
Big time. Peniston said there was this triangular object just sitting there on the forest floor glowing, like something straight out of science fiction. Except, this was real. And
Wow.
get this, it had markings on it, symbols that didn't seem to match any language anyone knew.
Hold on, it gets even weirder. Peniston claimed that he touched the object.
He touched it, yeah.
He touched it. And he said that when he did, a whole bunch of binary code just flooded into his mind. Ones and zeros just imprinted in his head by this thing, whatever it was.
Okay, now that's just straight up bizarre. A message, a warning, something we haven't even thought of yet.
Who knows? But it's definitely intriguing.
Strange lights, a weird object, and now potential code. We're officially in Twilight Zone territory.
And this is just the beginning.
Because the days that follow just make the mystery of Rendlesham Forest even deeper. The military gets involved, they're confused, they're concerned, and they want answers. They launch an investigation hoping to make sense of the chaos.
Understandable. I mean, imagine being in charge and having to deal with this.
Right. But what they find, well, it just makes things more complicated.
What do they find?
There are these weird markings on the ground, right where that object was seen, like it left its signature. And to make things even creepier, the radiation levels in the area were way higher than normal.
Okay, this is definitely not just a case of someone seeing things or letting their imagination run wild. Something strange was happening in Rendlesham Forest. Something real.
Exactly. And this is where Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt comes in. He was the deputy base commander. And on December 28th, he leads another expedition into the forest.
He was determined to get to the bottom of it, shine a light on all the weirdness that had taken over Rendlesham Forest.
And what he and his team saw that night, well, it's become legendary. They saw lights moving through the trees, appearing and disappearing, like they were playing hide and seek. Then a bright object just shows up in the sky, hangs there for a bit, then splits into several parts, and vanishes.
It's like something you'd read in a sci-fi novel.
Right. It was like a scene out of a movie, except this was real life. And it left Holt and his men totally stunned.
Can you imagine?
And luckily for us, Holt was smart enough to record everything that happened that night, so we have his firsthand account, in his own words, of this crazy experience.
That recording's a crucial piece of evidence. You can hear the astonishment in his voice, the confusion, the disbelief.
It's not just some dry report, it's a raw, emotional account of something that just defied everything these guys thought they knew. And what's even more interesting is that Holt's story is backed up by others who were with him.
Right, like John Burroughs, one of the airmen who went with Holt that night. He gave this vivid description of the object, the strange glow, the feeling that it was being controlled by something intelligent, something not from around here. And what's really important is that his story stayed consistent, even years later.
That consistency is key. These weren't random people prone to making things up. They were trained military personnel, used to observing and analyzing unusual things. The fact that their stories all line up, even after all this time, well, it makes the Rendlesham Forest incident even harder to ignore. It shows just how much this experience impacted those who were there. And then you got those binary codes that Peniston said he received.
Oh yeah, those. What about them?
Well, years later, he revealed that when they were translated, those codes contained coordinates to historical sites all over the world, and this phrase, exploration of humanity.
Exploration of humanity. That's creepy. It's like someone or something is trying to communicate with us, sending us on a scavenger hunt through history.
I know, right? But what does it mean?
That's the million-dollar question.
Multiple witnesses, weird lights, evidence left behind, and a possible message. It's getting harder and harder to just brush this off as overactive imaginations.
Way harder.
So we've got all these extraordinary claims, backed up by credible witnesses, physical evidence, and official reports. But we still don't have a clear answer. It's like a puzzle with missing pieces, a story with no ending. This is where we'll pause for now, leaving you to ponder the mysteries we've uncovered so far. But stick around, because the deeper we go into Rendlesham Forest, the more intriguing this whole thing gets.
I'm hooked. All right, so let's dive into some of the theories that folks have come up with to try and explain this whole Rendlesham Forest thing. I mean, the one that always grabs people's attention is the whole extraterrestrial idea, right? Alien encounter.
It's classic, isn't it?
Yeah, you got this object acting all weird, the strange symbols, and then Peniston getting those binary codes downloaded into his brain, talking about historical sites and the exploration of humanity. It's not hard to see why people jump to aliens.
Like something out of a movie. A spaceship landing in the middle of the English countryside, maybe scoping us out, studying us, who knows. But what if it's not aliens? What are some of the other explanations people have come up with?
Well, some researchers have suggested that what those folks at RAF Woodbridge saw, those lights, that object, maybe it was all part of some top-secret military operation, some kind of advanced technology that no one at the base was supposed to know about.
That's an interesting thought, especially when you think about all the missing documents and all the secrecy surrounding this whole thing. Could it be that the government was testing out some experimental aircraft, some new kind of surveillance equipment, and the Rendlesham Forest incident was just a case of mistaken identity? all hushed up for national security reasons.
It makes sense, especially considering what was going on back then, the Cold War, all that tension between the superpowers, the race to develop new technologies, the spying. It's not a stretch to think that something secret could have been happening in the skies over Rendlesham Forest, something even the people stationed there weren't supposed to know about.
But those witnesses, those were trained military personnel. They'd know the difference between an experimental aircraft and something truly bizarre, wouldn't they? They'd recognize technology even if it was top secret, wouldn't they?
Yeah, that's a good point, and it's one of the things that keeps the debate going. Some folks say that even if that object was something from Earth, it might have been so advanced, so ahead of its time, that it just looked like something completely alien to those guys. Or maybe they disguised it on purpose, made it look like a UFO to throw people off the scent.
It's like trying to untangle a giant knot. You've got those eyewitness accounts, the evidence like those markings on the ground and those high radiation readings. Then you've got the possibility of secret military stuff and crazy advanced tech. It's like reality itself is playing tricks on us.
And that's what's so cool about Rendlesham Forest. It makes you question what you think, makes you think about the world in a different way. But before we go too far down the rabbit hole, we should at least mention some of the more, well, normal explanations. Some skeptics have said that those lights could have been natural things like a meteor shower or weird atmospheric conditions. Some even said it might have been the planet Venus reflecting light.
I don't know, those explanations feel a little too easy, a little too simple, especially when you consider all the details people reported and all the official documentation like Halt's memo and those radiation readings. It seems like a lot of trouble to go to just to explain away a simple mistake.
You're right to be skeptical. While those explanations might fit for some parts of what happened, they don't really cover everything that was reported and documented. Rendlesham Forest is like this big tapestry woven from all these different threads, what people saw, the physical evidence, the official reports. To just say it was a mistake or a hoax, well, it just doesn't do justice to how complex this whole thing is.
So where does that leave us? We've got these crazy claims, people we believe telling these stories, evidence left behind, reports written up, but still, we don't have a clear answer.
That's the thing with this case. It keeps you guessing. It makes you think. But hold on, there's one more theory we should talk about. It's maybe the most unsettling one of all.
Really? Lay it on me.
There are some people who believe that the Rendlesham Forest incident was all a big psychological experiment cooked up by the government.
A psychological experiment? You mean like they staged this whole thing on purpose?
Exactly, like a big, elaborate setup to see how military personnel would react in a really weird, stressful situation.
That's kind of terrifying, honestly. You're saying the government might have deliberately created this fake paranormal event just to see how their own people would handle it.
It's definitely a controversial theory, but there are some smart people who believe it. Think about the context in 1980, Cold War paranoia at its peak. It's not crazy to think that governments were experimenting with all sorts of psychological warfare tactics, and maybe that included faking UFO encounters.
That raises some serious questions about ethics, though. I mean, to deliberately trick your own people, potentially traumatize them, just for some experiment, that's messed up.
No argument there, and that's why this theory is so controversial. But if it's true, it would explain a lot of things. The secrecy, the missing documents, maybe even why people's stories about what happened don't always match up perfectly. It's possible that some of the witnesses were never told what was really going on, leaving them with all these questions they couldn't answer.
I can't even wrap my head around that. The idea that our own government could be behind something so elaborate, so potentially harmful. If that's true, then Rendlesham Forest wasn't just a case of mistaken identity or some encounter with the unknown. It means someone was pulling the strings, messing with people's heads for some reason we don't understand.
Exactly. It adds a whole other layer to this already complicated mystery. It makes you question not only what you believe, but who you trust. It makes you wonder if the truth is out there at all, or if it's been hidden from us all along.
This is getting way deeper than I ever thought it would. I'm not even sure where to go from here. How do we even begin to make sense of all this?
That's the beauty of Rendlesham Forest, I guess. It doesn't give you easy answers. It forces you to really think, to weigh the evidence, to consider different perspectives, even the ones that make you uncomfortable.
You know, I have to admit, I'm more intrigued by this whole thing than I thought I'd be, and there's still so much to explore. I'm really curious to hear what else you've uncovered in your research. Well, we've really gone deep into the Rendlesham Forest incident, haven't we? We've looked at what people saw, the evidence they found, and all those theories. Some of them, well, pretty out there. It's a case that just doesn't fit neatly into any category, does it?
It really doesn't. It makes you think about what's possible, what we really know about the world around us. Makes you question things.
It does, and it reminds us that reality can be way weirder than anything we could make up, and sometimes the best mysteries are the ones that stay unsolved.
Totally agree. That's what keeps people coming back to this case. You've got believable witnesses, physical evidence, things we just can't explain.
We've got military folks, even high-ranking officers who saw this stuff happen and wrote it all down. Then there's the stuff left behind, like those markings on the ground and the radiation readings. That's not something you can just ignore. And of course, there's that whole thing with the binary code, that message about historical sites and exploration of humanity.
It all adds up to a really fascinating puzzle. And the fact that there's no one answer, no explanation that everyone agrees on, well, that just makes it even more interesting, do you think?
I think so. It turns everyone into a detective. You get to weigh the evidence, decide for yourself what you think happened.
Exactly. So what do you think all of this means for us, for people like us who weren't there in Rendlesham Forest that night? What's the takeaway from all of this?
Well, I think the big lesson here is that it's important to keep an open mind. We live in a world where we're constantly being told what to think, what to believe, and it's easy to just dismiss anything that doesn't fit with what we already think we know.
It's like that saying, we don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are. Our own biases, our own beliefs, they can get in the way of seeing the bigger picture.
They can. Rendlesham Forest, it challenges us to look beyond those limitations, to consider that maybe there's more to the universe than we can currently understand. It asks us to be okay with not knowing everything, to acknowledge that there are things we just can't explain yet.
And that's okay, right? It's more than okay. It's exciting. Not knowing, that's where the real discoveries happen.
I love that. It's a reminder that there are still mysteries out there, things we can't explain with science or technology. And that's a good thing. Embracing that, accepting that we don't have all the answers, that's how we grow, how we learn.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Rendlesham Forest shows us that we should never stop asking questions, never stop exploring, never stop looking for the truth, no matter how strange or hard to find it might be.
It's a call to adventure, right? A challenge to get out of our comfort zones and explore the things we don't understand. Who knows what we might find?
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Rendlesham Forest, here's something to think about. What if the truth about what happened there is even more mind-blowing than we can imagine? What if the answers aren't found by ignoring the impossible, by investigating it with an open mind?
That's a great question to leave our listeners with, one that might just inspire them to go on their own journeys of discovery. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the unknown. We'll see you next time for another adventure into the world of the unexplained.
Until then, stay curious.
All right, so get this. We're diving into a UFO sighting, and not just any UFO sighting. This one was over the pyramids in Egypt.
Yeah, pyramids and UFOs, it's like ancient mysteries meets modern sci-fi.
I know, right? It's the kind of stuff that makes you want to believe. And what's really got us hooked for this deep dive is the evidence you guys have sent in.
Oh yeah, we're not talking about just some grainy photos or shaky videos here.
No, sir, we've got multiple eyewitness accounts, detailed reports, photos, videos, even talk of electronics going haywire. It's like a full-blown UFO buffet.
It is, and it's our job to sift through all of it, separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak.
Exactly. Try and figure out what really went down over those ancient wonders. So where do we even begin with something like this?
Well, I think it's important to start with context. You can't talk about a UFO sighting over the Giza Plateau without understanding the weight of that location.
Right. The pyramids themselves are already shrouded in mystery and wonder.
Exactly. These structures have been standing for millennia, inspiring awe and speculation.
So to have a potential UFO sighting in a place like that, it's like adding another layer to the enigma.
Absolutely. It amplifies the intrigue tenfold.
For sure. So let's set the scene. We're in Egypt, home of Pharaoh's sphinxes, and of course those incredible pyramids.
A place where history and myth intertwine, where the sands of time hold secrets that we're still trying to uncover.
Okay, so we've got the backdrop. Now let's talk about the actual sighting. What do these witnesses see? You mentioned multiple accounts. Who are these people?
Well, we're talking about a diverse group of people, which actually makes their consistent observations even more compelling.
Oh, how so?
Well, think about it. You've got tourists like Sophie Richardson, a British woman who was visiting the pyramids. She managed to capture the object on camera.
Oh, wow. So there's actual footage.
Yes, and according to some analyses, the footage shows the object changing shape as it hovered in the air.
Hold on, shape-shifting. Over the pyramids. That's starting to sound like something straight out of a movie.
It's a detail that definitely sparks the imagination. And then you've got Dr. Ahmed Nassa, a respected archaeologist who was on site during the event.
Okay, so a scientist, an actual expert in ancient stuff.
Exactly, and he described seeing a bright light moving in patterns that defied any conventional aircraft he could think of.
So not a plane, not a drone, something truly unusual.
Right, and it wasn't just tourists and archaeologists who saw this thing. We also have reports from local residents, people who live in the shadow of the pyramids.
Oh, wow. So people who know the area who've probably seen all sorts of things in the sky.
Exactly. And one resident, Hassan al-Masri, said that strange lights over the pyramids aren't unheard of, but this was different.
Different how?
He said it was bigger, brighter, and more unsettling than anything he'd seen before.
Okay, so we've got multiple witnesses from completely different backgrounds, all describing this unusual aerial object. But you also mentioned electronics going haywire. What exactly does that mean?
Well, there are reports of cameras malfunctioning, phones losing signal, even watches stopping.
Wow, like some kind of electromagnetic pulse.
It's a possibility. You see, this kind of thing is often associated with strong electromagnetic fields.
So are you saying that this UFO might have been emitting some kind of electromagnetic energy?
Some theories suggest that advanced technologies, whether terrestrial or extraterrestrial, could potentially generate these kinds of fields.
So we're not just talking about lights in the sky, we're talking about potential electromagnetic interference, which adds a whole other dimension to this mystery.
Absolutely. It's not just a visual phenomenon, but something that might have had a tangible physical effect.
And that's why the evidence becomes so crucial in this case, right?
Precisely, we have to move beyond anecdotal accounts and look at the hard data, the photos, the videos, and any scientific analyses that have been done on them. So let's talk about that hard data. You mentioned some fascinating material for this. Deep dive photographic evidence is always a good starting point.
Right, because a picture's worth 1,000 words or so, they say.
Exactly. And in this case, the pictures, or rather the videos, might be worth even more. There are some analyses suggesting anomalies in the footage.
Anomalies? Like, what kind of anomalies are we talking about?
Well, think about things like impossible accelerations and sudden changes in direction that seemingly defy the laws of physics.
Hold on, impossible accelerations. What does that even look like? I mean, I could imagine a car accelerating quickly, but how does that apply to a UFO?
Imagine an object moving at incredible speed, then abruptly stopping or changing direction in a way that no known aircraft could achieve. We're talking about movements that would generate G-forces that would crush any human pilot.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely not something you see every day. It's like those videos you see where a fighter jet is trying to track a UFO and the thing just zips off at the right angle, leaving the jet in the dust.
It's that level of maneuverability that makes these reports so perplexing. And it's these kinds of details that have caught the attention of some prominent figures in the ufology and scientific communities.
Okay, so it's not just us armchair enthusiasts who are intrigued by this case. Who are some of the big names that are taking this Egyptian UFO sighting seriously?
Well, you can't talk about ancient mysteries and potential extraterrestrial encounters without mentioning Eric von Däniken.
Oh, right, the Chariots of the Gods guy. He's all about the ancient astronaut theory, right? Aliens visiting Earth in the distant past and influencing human civilizations.
Precisely. And when it comes to this Egyptian UFO sighting, von Däniken sees it as another piece of evidence supporting his theory.
So he's basically saying that the pyramids might have been built with alien help or something.
He argues that ancient sites like the pyramids might have acted as beacons for extraterrestrial visitors, drawing them to these locations throughout history.
So maybe the pyramids weren't just tombs for pharaohs, but some kind of intergalactic welcome center. That's a pretty wild thought. But what about someone a little more grounded? Is there anyone who's taking a more scientific approach to this case?
For a more contemporary perspective, we can turn to someone like Luis Elizondo, the former Pentagon official who headed the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or ATIP for short.
Okay, remind me, ATIP. That was the government's secret UFO program that came to light a few years ago, right?
That's the one, and Elizondo has spoken publicly about the need to take UFO sightings like this one in Egypt seriously.
So he's not just brushing this off as a bunch of nonsense.
Not at all. He argues that there are too many credible reports, too much unexplained evidence to simply dismiss these events as misidentifications or hoaxes.
So he's basically saying, hey, we might not know what these things are, but we need to figure it out because they're out there.
That's a fair assessment, and he's not alone. Even figures known for their scientific skepticism, like astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, have acknowledged the intrigue surrounding this case.
Well, Neil deGrasse Tyson is intrigued by a UFO sighting over the pyramids. I mean, he's usually pretty down to earth about these kinds of things.
While Tyson maintains a cautious approach, emphasizing the need for rigorous scientific investigation, he's admitted that this Egyptian case, with its multiple witnesses and compelling evidence, is one that warrants further study.
Okay, so we've got the ancient astronaut enthusiasts, former government officials, and even skeptical scientists all paying attention to this event. It's like everyone's looking at this UFO sighting through their own lens, trying to make sense of it. But let's get down to brass tacks. What are the possible explanations? Are we talking aliens, secret government tech, or just a really weird atmospheric phenomenon?
Those are the big three when it comes to UFO theories. Let's start with the extraterrestrial hypothesis. This one's pretty straightforward. The object observed over the pyramids could be a spacecraft of non-terrestrial origin.
Aliens checking out the pyramids. I mean, it's a classic UFO scenario, right? But is there anything beyond just the coolness factor that supports this idea?
The evidence we've discussed, the impossible accelerations, the shape-shifting reports, the electromagnetic interference, those details are hard to explain with our current understanding of physics and technology. Some argue that these characteristics could point to an extraterrestrial origin.
So basically, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and flies like a spaceship, maybe it's an alien duck.
Well, it's not quite that simple, but the point is that the evidence doesn't easily fit into our conventional understanding of how things work.
Okay, so if it's not aliens, what else could it be? What about that secret government tech you mentioned?
Another possibility is the advanced technology hypothesis. This suggests that the object might be a demonstration of highly advanced technology that is currently unknown to the public.
You're talking like some super secret black budget military project testing out their next-gen stealth aircraft or something.
Exactly. We know that governments around the world have developed technologies that were kept under wraps for years, sometimes decades. It's possible that what these witnesses saw was a glimpse of something truly cutting edge.
I can already picture the conspiracy theories swirling around this one Area 51 reverse-engineered alien tech, you name it.
It's certainly a theory that sparks the imagination, but we can't rule out the possibility that this was a natural, albeit extremely rare phenomenon. That's where the atmospheric phenomenon hypothesis comes in.
So you're talking about something like ball lightning, a mirage, or some kind of weird weather event that just happened to look like a UFO. So you're saying Mother Nature was putting on a little light show over the pyramids that night?
It's possible there are atmospheric phenomena that can create some pretty wild visual illusions, strange lights, and even electromagnetic disturbances.
So it's like a cosmic prank.
Well, not exactly. It's more like a confluence of factors, a perfect storm, so to speak. You could have unusual weather conditions interacting with atmospheric optics, maybe even some geological factors unique to the Giza Plateau, and boom, you've got something that looks like a UFO.
Okay, so we've got aliens, we've got secret tech, and we've got Mother Nature messing with our minds. Three very different explanations, each with its own pros and cons. It's a lot to take in. Where do we even begin to unravel all of this?
That's the challenge, isn't it? We have this collection of compelling evidence, but no definitive answers. The extraterrestrial hypothesis is certainly exciting, but it lacks that concrete proof.
Right, it's all based on interpretation and speculation.
Exactly. Then you've got the advanced technology hypothesis, which is plausible, but it relies on us believing that there are these classified projects so advanced they could create something like what was observed over the pyramids.
And let's be honest, there's a lot of secrecy surrounding government programs, so it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility.
True, but it's still a leap of faith. And then you have the atmospheric phenomenon hypothesis, which, while potentially explaining some aspects, might not account for the more bizarre details like the impossible accelerations and shapeshifting.
It's like we've been handed a puzzle, but some of the pieces are missing. We can see the outlines of something incredible, but we can't quite complete the picture.
I think that's a great analogy, and in a way that's the beauty of a case like this. It pushes us to think critically, to question what we know, and to consider possibilities that lie beyond our current understanding.
It's a reminder that we don't have all the answers, that there's still so much we don't know about our universe, about our own planet, and even about the potential for technologies that could exist.
Precisely. And that's why it's important to approach this topic with a healthy balance of skepticism and open-mindedness. We shouldn't jump to conclusions or dismiss evidence without careful consideration, but at the same time, we shouldn't be afraid to ask the big questions, to explore the unknown, and to entertain the possibility that there might be more to our universe than we currently comprehend.
It's about embracing the mystery while still seeking answers, right?
Exactly. And I think that brings us to the most important question of all. What do you think happened over the pyramids?
Yeah, we've laid out the evidence, we've explored the expert opinions, and we've discussed the possible explanations. Now it's your turn to weigh the possibilities and draw your own conclusions.
This Egyptian UFO sighting, like so many others, remains an enigma, a tantalizing glimpse into the unknown.
But it's a glimpse that can spark our imaginations, fuel our curiosity, and perhaps even inspire us to seek out our own answers to the mysteries of the universe.
So until our next deep dive, keep those eyes on the skies and those minds open to the wonders that might be out there waiting to be discovered.
Who knows what we'll uncover together next time? So, 69.